Let's talk a little bit about these teams that are going to play this weekend. And, Florida's coming in as a really big underdog. And I mean, you always did really, really well when your team was maybe underestimated or where they were an underdog. Is it almost easier to approach a game when you feel like everyone is giving you no shot?
Uh, I'd much rather be the favorite because that means I have a great team. Underdog, you're an underdog for a reason. I will say this: Coach Napier and his staff, I think, have done an amazing job. I thought, there's the school in Tallahassee. They're not. They're. I'm not saying the players quit, but they're just not playing well. And Florida, they. I was worried. I made a comment about they lost momentum, and they got some momentum right now. Now, reality is they're looking down the barrel of some really tough games coming up. On the other side, they're the best team in the country. What they did to Texas. I got them ranked number one. I got Oregon ranked number two. Um, that was the best half and game I've seen in a long time. To go into Texas and play that well offensively and defensively, and actually it turned the ball over a few times on offense, but that defensive performance against Texas was scary, scary good. And as you get to November, teams that have great defenses usually win it.
Yeah.
And right now, I've got them number one.
Florida has DJ Lagway now at the helm after Graham Mertz went down. Thoughts on how he has done so far this season?
Well, I love watching him. I actually am a fan of his, and I go back and, we don't cover the Florida Gators. We don't cover much of the SEC. I get to talk about the game this week, so I've actually watched him, and he's everything you want. I mean, he can run it, he can throw it. They say I don't know him. They say he's a great kid. So I mean, he's everything you want at quarterback. So he's got a bright future.
Defensively, Florida has even looked better since the bye week. They seem to be flying around. I think that was, at least in this house, the biggest critique on defense before was that it didn't look like they were just going full throttle every single play. And I feel like that has changed some. What are they going to need to do to be successful against Georgia's offense?
They have to. The one thing about Carson Beck, he will give it to you once in a while. He had a couple of picks, I think 2 or 3 picks the last game. It's going to be a tough road. I think, once again, I've got a lot of respect for this Georgia team. I look across the board. I don't see a weakness on offense, defense. Everybody points they lost the game to Alabama, but the second half was one of the most incredible performances I've seen, too, by Georgia. So I think Florida, to hang in this game, they got to slow they got to slow the game down. It's almost unbelievable you say that about a Florida Gator team, but they better shorten this game, and that means snap the ball with 2 seconds, 1 second left. They cannot turn the ball over, and they got to tackle. That's the only way this thing's close. If it's close, who knows what happens in the fourth quarter. If they don't do those things I just said, it's going to be a really, really long day.
We talked about Lagway, and you said you liked him. And if you watched film on him, and he does all the right things, but this is still a really scary game for a true freshman. Do you think that a true freshman can score enough to keep them in it?
If it gets into be a shootout, I'm very concerned about that. To answer your question, no, I don't think they can. If Georgia gets hot, I don't see Florida, it being a 45-38 game at all. I see this if Florida has a chance, they create some turnovers, they shorten the game, and it's 27-24 type thing. So I think he's got a great future. I think as they continue to build the roster around him, he's going to have a hell of a career at Florida.
Before I get you out of here, Trevor Etienne was UF's RB1 last year. He transferred to Florida, and this is becoming more and more common in college football. But imagine if that had happened when you were coaching. How would you approach this as the Gator coach, and you're looking across the sidelines and you see your last year's running back in red and black?
Yeah, I've been removed from the Gators for a while, and I remember reading that and seeing that, and it kind of hurt me. I just go somewhere, but don't go there. It'd be like a guy from Ohio State ended up in Ann Arbor, and there's a lot of places to go, but don't go there. Especially if you want him. It'd be different if he was kicked off, or if he was a player that just wasn't playing much, but he was their horse, and he ends up up the street there in Athens, Georgia. So I know he's a hell of a player, and that shocked me when I saw that.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I guess it's a symptom of where we are in college football and with NIL and the transfer portal and stuff. But there's part of me that thinks, like, man, are these kids not understanding the intensities of these rivalries? Or like, how is it hurting us as fans more than it's hurting them as players? Do you think that NIL has made rivalries matter less?
I think it's all to make a general statement like that. I don't like to do that because certainly it did for some. It did ETN,
Mm-hmm.
but there's other people that live and die by these rivalries. So I do believe it's NIL has changed a lot of things. It certainly has changed that. There was a day back. You talk about a guy that dislikes Georgia is the old ball coach Spurrier. I mean, you ask him the same question. Can you imagine one of your players walking into your office and going like this? I'm going to Georgia Bulldogs and be like, what just happened here? So I think we all just become numb a little bit that this is what it is. College football is great right now. These teams on the field are great. I think there's great parity. So there's so many cool things going on right now. You got a 12-team playoff. There's 20. I counted 20 to 22 teams that still think they can make the playoffs. Back in the BCS era, you lost a game, you're out.
Mm-hmm.
You lived it, Allie and Eric. You guys lived it. So there's so much good, but there is reality that it is different. Does the bowl game mean as much as it did years ago? No, not even close. It's about the playoff. So us as fans, and you're certainly not an old timer. I am. We just got to say this is what it is and accept it, move on, and love the greatness of the game still.
Yeah. All right, before I get you out of here, one more question. I know you already talked about that this should never leave Jacksonville, but it is temporarily the cocktail party going to Tampa and Atlanta in 2026 and 2027 because they're
That's right.
renovating the stadium. Do you think they should have considered a home and home, or do you think it's great that they're going to Tampa, Atlanta? Obviously, we want to keep this rivalry as pure as we can and in Jacksonville forever, long term.
What years are they going?
2026 and 2027. They're doing Atlanta and Tampa.
I think that's fantastic. I didn't know that. I think that's fantastic. Yeah, it would have been easy. I remember they did it one time when Coach Spurrier put 50 on them in Athens, Georgia.
Yeah.
Remember that story. So I think it's fantastic. Well done by whoever made that decision, Tampa, Atlanta. So now you can say one in Florida and one in the state of Georgia. I think it's great.
All right, Coach. Well, we appreciate you. Thanks for hanging out. And what game are you at on Saturday?
We're at the top 5 matchup, Ohio State, Penn State, and State College, Pennsylvania. So it's going to be a big one.
How hard is it for you to remain neutral for that one?
I'm allowed to be non-neutral. That's the cool thing about Fox, and they know I cheer for the Gators. I cheer for the Utah Utes. I'm very open about that, and I cheer for the Buckeyes. I cheer for my Falcons. The Bowling Green just beat Toledo in a rivalry game. So that's the great thing about Fox, and be who you are.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you joining us. This was fun. Have fun on Saturday, and we'll be thinking about you at the cocktail party.
So good to see you. Hello to your family.
I'll tell them hi. Thanks. Tell Shelly that we said hi too, and all the grandbabies. I can't believe all of your children.
She's a huge fan of yours, Allie.
Oh, I love that. I was always such a big Shelly fan. I know. I think I've told you the story, but we saw her in the concession line of Florida Georgia, and I think it was the very first Florida Georgia that Eric attended as a fan, and somebody had yelled at her to sit down in her seats, and they didn't realize who they were yelling at. And she turned around and told them that they had a couch in their living room if they wanted to sit down. And I just it ingrained in my heart. That is the perfect response. Nate was 6 years old, probably. He was very small standing next to her, but she is the best for sure.
One and only.
Yep. All right, Coach. Well, you have a good day. I'll talk to you soon.